you can just come and see what we're all about, and then join later because I know you're going to want to. I'm Eileen Smith. I'm co-chair of the Garden Club, and my co-chair, Darlene, lives in Canada, Darlene LaBelle, half the year, and she was not able to get here in time for this meeting. So, but hopefully next time she'll be here for the next event that we have. So you'll get to meet her. Our treasurer is Dee Reen, which probably all of you met today. And I just want to remind you to silence your cell phones before we get started so we don't have any interruptions there. Hostesses, Babs and Donna, thank you. Thank you for the very clever treats. Oh, you don't have time. Okay. No.
I'll get it off my phone.
Okay. Well, we're going to start here in just a second with our speaker for today from My Dragonfly Gardens, Kirsten Sharp-ortega. And I believe Babs is going to tell us a little bit about Kirsten.
Well, I can't yet. I mean, I don't have my paper.
Okay.
I was so busy.
I thought you were looking it up.
Well, I am, but can you talk more about the club and what's coming up?
Okay. I'm open to that. Dee, tell me what the amount was in our treasury report today.
$607 and change, because I don't remember.
Okay, that's good.
So
You wanna know that
607, what we have now before dues.
So we're in a very healthy
Yes.
way. Okay, great. Okay, let's, are you ready now? Okay.
Yes, let me do it this way. Yeah. Okay, this is Kirsten Sharp-ortega. She was born and grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. I know somebody else that's from there. She has
everywhere.
She has a love of plants, comes from her family, and their 1 acre of garden, which had a large vegetable garden, fruit and nut trees on it, as well as many different flower beds and trees of all shapes and sizes. She spent nearly every weekend going to many botanical gardens and parks in and around Johannesburg and Pretoria and the surrounding countryside. Holidays were spent in a caravan. You know what that is, right? A caravan would be like a camper. Camping around the country. Lived in many different places with varying climates, so have grown different plants over the years. She grew incredible roses and lavender in the mountains of California. She had 73 different types of hosta in her garden in Germany. Grown many different vegetables in the various places she has lived, such as potatoes, tomatoes, beans, squash, spinach, strawberries, raspberries, and lots of herbs. Moved to the United States in 2013. First, she was in Virginia, and she's now here in Florida. She completed her horticultural degree with a specialization in landscape design. Her passion and love of plants led her to Mark Gotts and Green
Isle Gardens, yeah.
And Green Isle Gardens, where she was given the opportunity to follow her dream and create habitat havens for people and critters to enjoy. She worked full-time at Green Isle Gardens for nearly 5 years. She is now working for herself as co-owner of My Dragonfly Gardens, and they specialize in landscape/habitat design with native and Florida-friendly plants, as well as offering consultations and maintenance. She's on the board of directors for FANN, Florida Association of Native Nurseries, and she's the chairperson for the Plant Promotion Committee at FANN, promoting underutilized native plants of Florida. Kirsten.
Hi, good afternoon, and I am so super impressed to see how many people are here. This is awesome. It means that you guys are really into natives and you're into doing the difference, making a difference for the world. I As Babs very kindly said, I'm from South Africa. I've lived in many places around the world, and I never really realized it growing up, but I was used to growing natives or indigenous plants in South Africa. That's what we had in our gardens. So it's something that I have found a passion for and a love for. For me, my biggest reward and biggest joy is planting somebody's garden or helping somebody create a habitat in their garden, and then I get texts and emails and phone calls. This butterfly is laying eggs, that caterpillar is here, this bird is in my garden. So for me, that's what makes my life and my job very special. Today I'm going to go over a PowerPoint that I have about how simple it is to plant natives and how easy it is. You know, HOAs nowadays can't actually stop you doing it. And from what I can gather, your HOA is pretty lenient here, which is nice because I work a lot in the villages, and there we have a fun time with the HOA. So, you know, you guys are very lucky not to have to deal with that. But welcome. Thank you so much for coming out today, and please feel free to ask questions. I am very passionate about what I do, so if I get carried away and you need me to slow down, please say. Can you all hear me okay like this?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So, as you can see, that is me. I've been doing this now for just over 6.5 years. I love what I do, and I know it makes a big difference. In Florida here, unfortunately, we are clearing and destroying so much native habitat that it is at an alarming rate. And whatever you make or whatever you put in your garden makes such a big difference. Even just one plant that is native will make a difference. And that is something that I really like to try and tell people so people can understand. Even if you're growing a pot with natives in, that will work. Every little bit counts. Okay, so let's get started. Find my mouse. So why natives? Why would anybody want to plant natives? Natives have been growing here for thousands of years. They have evolved and they've learned to cope with our sand. We don't have a lovely, rich, organic muck like you have in the rest of the United States. We have sand. Sand that the natives have adapted over thousands of years to be able to cope with and get their nutrients from the ground. They don't need chemicals, they don't need fertilizers, they can actually get what they need just with the water and a little bit of mulch occasionally. A lot of our natives need a very acidic soil, so that's why a lot of the times we use pine bark or pine straw. Pine straw is just pine needles. On the top there, on the left-hand side, that left-hand side, you will see a caterpillar, and that is a monarch caterpillar. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of or know that the monarch caterpillars have a really big problem at the moment. They're losing loss of habitat at an alarming rate. They're also losing their natural food, and that is what is on the right-hand side there. That is our native swamp milkweed. It has pink flowers. So those are two of our very popular and important little critters that live here. And actually they live all over the States. Did you know that the monarch butterflies fly from Mexico and they go all the way up the eastern seaboard, and they have generations all the way up that way, but when they go back from Canada back to Mexico, it is one generation that flies that whole way, just FYI. They're pretty amazing little guys and girls. So, as I was saying before, a lot of people are finding themselves in HOAs. Actually, believe it or not, 28% of households in California, we were talking about California earlier, sorry, in Florida, actually have HOAs. So that is why it is so important, to grow natives so that they're aesthetically pleasing, so that it doesn't cause problems with your HOAs. And there is a very easy way to do that with Florida natives. This is a design I did up in the villages, and this just shows you, this is one that has a mixture of Florida friendly and Florida native. Now, Florida friendly is plants that are growing, that are not necessarily native, but they grow really well down here because they've adapted and they can survive down here. They are not invasive. We have a lot of plants down here that are invasive, and they are invasive for a reason, because they take over our native habitat. A lot of the big buck stores like Lowe's and Home Depot still sell some of these invasive plants, and it's a very hard time that everybody's having trying to get them to remove them. But because everybody sees them growing in everybody's gardens, everybody goes out and buys them. And if you want to know some of the invasives, I can tell you them after this presentation. Okay? So So, with any natives and with any design and anything like that, of course, it always works the right plant, the right place. And with natives, that is definitely relevant. We have shrubs, we have flowers, we have perennials, and we have vines, we have grasses, and we have trees. When you're creating anything like with native plants, it is really good to create layering so that you can get different aesthetic, so it looks more aesthetically pleasing. We have shrubs that flower on springtime and then they produce berries for the birds. We have stuff that flowers, some shrubs flower all year round. When I do any form of designing with natives, I always try and make sure that I give you some form of color all year round, and that is possible with natives. Some people, I think a lot of people actually believe that natives can only give you color and things that are going on certain times of the year, and that's not true. There are a lot of things that we can actually use that will flower throughout the year or produce berries throughout the year. When you're creating an ecosystem or a habitat for a garden, you need to have a lot of different elements. Food bearing for our butterflies and our insects, so pollinator plants. We also need food sources for our birds. So by creating something with larval host plants and nectar plants, I bring that whole ecosystem into your garden. I don't just use pollinator plants, I use everything to create that ecosystem. And again, creating the layering. And just FYI, these photos that are on this presentation, I took all of them as well. So just to let you know, these are all critters that have either been in my garden or somewhere around there. These are a couple of our critters that you're going to see. The top one is a giant swallowtail. That is, their larval host plant is the wild lime or our citrus. It is also a Hercules club, so those are two of our plants that they will use. The cool thing is the caterpillars on that butterfly are the funkiest looking things, and I'm not sure if I have a photo, but they look like bird poop. So they're brown and black and white, and if you scratch them on the top of their heads, they have this forked tongue that comes out just like a snake's tongue, and it doesn't hiss, but it emits a really stinky smell. They are my favorite caterpillars. I love to find them, and they disguise themselves really, really well. This little green guy at the bottom, that is a spice bush swallowtail. It is a beautiful butterfly when they hatch, when they come out of the chrysalis. And the fun thing with that little guy is when it's ready to pupate, it turns bright orange. And of course, the painted eyes on the top of its head are just to scare the birds away so that they don't eat them. All the caterpillars come up with some form of disguise to try and stop the birds, because of course the birds all want to eat these juicy caterpillars. The next one on the bottom there is, of course, black-eyed Susan, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with black-eyed Susan because I'm sure you've grown it in some point somewhere around the world, or the country, I should say. It is a really important nectar source for our native bees and our honeybees. How many of you know that honeybees are not native to the United States? Yeah, they are not. They're from Europe. And honeybees will sting you. Native bees usually, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, will not sting you because they are solitary bees. Just a fun fact. So those are just some of our critters that we have in the garden. Those little guys on that black-eyed Susan are, the one on the top is a native bee, the one on the bottom is a honeybee.
Kristen, how do you tell the difference?
So I just know what the honeybees look like.
Yeah, they bite you.
Because I'm also highly allergic to them, so I know what they look like.
Oh.
But our native bees, we have over 4,000, I think it is, they now know, 4,000 species of native bees in the United States.
Wow.
And they're all solitary, none of them form a hive. And we have some amazing little bees. Some of the plants, I have a shrub in my garden called the buttonbush. And unfortunately, I didn't have any small ones, otherwise I would have brought one. But it is I've counted between 16 and 18 different species of insects using that bush at one given time. Then you have to add on top of that the birds that will eat the berries. It flowers and it berries throughout the year. So it's a really important plant. And it has little pink flowers, pinky white flowers, and then it has purple berries. So it's a great food source, both, food source for the bees and for the pollinators. This is another staple flower that is really good. Of course, we've been talking about this, the right plant, the right place, creating habitat in your garden. A lot of people have some sun, some shade, and there are natives that will handle some sun and some natives that will handle shade. So you can still have things flowering and doing things in sun or shade. It doesn't really make any difference. And I think that's something that a lot of people think, oh, it's shade, so nothing's gonna flower in my shade. absolute brilliant plants for flowering in the shade is the Stokes aster. This is a perennial. It has these beautiful big flowers, and I'm not kidding, the flowers are most probably about that size. So a good, 2.5 inches. They are like a landing pad for our butterflies. So a lot of the bigger butterflies, that's a dusky wing butterfly on there, and it's a great plant for a shady spot. It has leaves that are usually on the ground, just basil leaves, and then it gets these flower spikes that come up with these wonderful purpley blue flowers with a white center. I've actually seen some of them that are actually white as well, which are very striking. So that's a really great little plant, Stokes aster. Let's have a look. So this is just some fun facts. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Doug Tallamy. Do any of you ever heard of him? Okay, so I don't need to tell you, when I went to go work for Mark at Green Isle Gardens, he gave me a book to read. And he said to me, before you design for me, read this book. And I said, okay. Doug Tallamy, Bringing Nature Home. I was absolutely bawling my heart out within the first 3 or 4 pages of the book. We are destroying our country and the world with turf. Turf grass is such a bad thing. Florida, just FYI, Florida does not have any turf grass. It's natural to Florida, just in case you didn't know that. But Doug Tallamy is trying to get people to realize how important it is to plant natives and to go back to being the basics. We don't have to get rid of every single piece of turf. We just need to be more aware of what we're growing, why we're growing it, and what the difference is by adding the natives back. He is an entomologist, and he's an incredible man. And this is old, actually, since I had this PowerPoint created, or I made this PowerPoint, he has now found over 540 different species of caterpillar living off one oak tree. One single oak tree. And that is butterflies and moths. So Lepidoptera, any form of Lepidoptera that lives on them. A brood of chickadees feeds their babies over 6,000 caterpillars in one season. One breeding bird, a pair of birds. So can you imagine how many birds one oak tree supports? And of course, here in Florida, we're killing those oak trees at an alarming rate so we can build more houses because we don't have enough. So, just some fun facts. Seriously, if you want to read a book that will enlighten you and just make you realize why it is so important, and these people have already read it, so they know what it's like. It is it's an uplifting book. It's not all bad. He has got a lot of good things and a lot of very easy things that can make a huge difference, okay? Let's see. So we were talking about shade. This is an area in the villages, of course, where I do a lot of my work, and this is using natives in the shade. These are all shrubs. This vine at the top there with the blue flowers, that is a vine that is endemic to South Florida. Now, endemic means it's only found in South Florida, nowhere else in the world. It is a very, very important nectar source for our bees, our native bees, and it only flowers in the wintertime. So it started flowering, mine started flowering about 3-4 weeks ago, and it will flower all the way through until May next year. It is a wonderful, wonderful vine with very pretty sky blue flowers. And that's a very important nectar source for our bees. So if you have a shady spot, or if you have even full sun, it'll grow in full sun, it'll cover your trellis within 1 season. I can guarantee you that.
What is it?
It's called sky blue cluster vine. Okay, sky blue cluster vine. It's an awesome, awesome plant. Some of the other things that are in there, the front ground cover that you can see in the front corner here, I have some of that here today. That is called swamp twinflower. That is a really, really important larval host plant for 2 of our little butterflies. It is also a great ground cover that is evergreen. It flowers throughout the year, and it only gets to about 7 inches tall. I have used that for turf replacement in the villages quite a few times, and I use it in shady spots because it likes shade. It's called swamp twinflower, and it's a bit of a misnomer because it doesn't need excessive amounts of water. But it has very pretty little lavender flowers, and it creates a wonderful mat. I love to use that along pathways to put in between flagstones, things like that. So it's a great, great little ground cover, and that's called swamp twinflower. On the corner up towards the door there is kunti. Kunti is one of our native palms. It is also a larval host plant for an endangered butterfly called the Attila butterfly. The fun thing about that is since people have started using Kunti in their gardens, they're actually bringing the Attila butterfly back from extinction, and they're actually starting to move further north because we're getting so warm. The butterflies are migrating north with the Kunti. So it's a really cool plant. It's very low maintenance, it does great in pots, and it's really good for sun or shade. It doesn't really care. It's evergreen, and it does have cones. There is a male and a female, and the female does produce seeds on it that turn orange once the cone opens. They will make a dog sick. So I always tell people, if you have an animal and you want to grow them, just break the cone off if it's a female. But that's a great little low growing. It gets to about 1.5 to 2 foot tall. The plants at the back between the vine and the ground cover and the Kunti palm are wild coffees. And they have such a fun scientific name. It's called Psychotria nervosa. I get such a kick out of that every time. It is a type of coffee. It is a coffee that you don't want to drink. You want to leave it for the birds. It has flowers in the springtime for our pollinators, so bees and wasps. And then it produces these wonderful berries that go from green to red to black. We have 4 different kinds of coffee here in Florida that we can use, and this is wild coffee, regular wild coffee. It only likes shade. It does not like sun. We have another version which is called velvet leaf, and that's my favorite because it has the most amazing gray-green leaves that feel like velvet. That one is more upright. This one will get 8 foot tall by 8 foot wide very easily. The velvet leaf is more tall and columnal. It's not one that spreads. And then the other 2 is we have a regular coffee called Little Psycho. And it's a low-growing regular coffee, so it only gets to about 4 foot. And then the last one, which can actually handle some sun, is Bahama wild coffee. And that one has smaller leaves, it has more flowers and berries. And the cool thing with these coffees, if you use them, the different ones, you have flowering longer times and you have berries longer times. So that is producing food and berries for our pollinators and our birds over a long period of time. And that's what the whole thing is all about. You want to give the birds and the insects something to eat as long as you can. So that is a very simple, very straightforward and easy planting that doesn't take a lot of maintenance when it's established. So it shows you that it's really easy for a shady area, because a lot of the time these little courtyards in the front of houses is very difficult to get something that's going to make them happy. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have any of these magazines, but if you go online, you can actually have a look at it. There are some new ones that I put down, and I did not realize there would be so many people. Otherwise, I would have brought a box. But I will be able to drop some more off if you guys are interested in getting some of these magazines. They're a wonderful source of information. I've been a director of FAN for, wow, I'm going on my 4th year this next year. And it is a very important thing. It's Florida Association of Native Nurseries, and that's kind of not really a good name because we don't just do nurseries, we cover everything to do with native. So there is a really good amount of resources in that book to give you guys information if you want to know any more about natives. This one is from 2019, and very exciting for me, I had 2 designs in that magazine that year. They're 2 very different designs. One was formal and one was informal. And I was talking to these ladies here about firebush. Now, firebush is a really awesome, fabulous, wonderful native plant. We have a compact version and we have a regular version. Firebush will bring butterflies, it will bring hummingbirds, and it will bring birds to your garden. It is one of those plants that you can grow in a pot, you can grow in the ground. It can take some shade, but it will stretch if it is too much shade, but it loves a good amount of sun. And that is this beauty here. This is a property in Deer Island. It's an acreage home, and they wanted to actually restore it back, and they have put it into a trust now that it will never be developed. They have bought 17 acres on the Deer Island Peninsula, and they have put it all back. We removed all the invasives, and then we've just planted it full of natives. It is an incredible property and an incredible way of keeping some of our beautiful, unique habitat in Florida. Some of the other things in this property, of course, are the curved palms. Those are our native palms. That's actually our state tree for Florida. That's the cabbage palm. It was really fun. This other property here, the formal one, I actually had to get 2 guys with a crane and a very big crane to try and get 2 of those palms, planted. And I knew exactly what I wanted and how I wanted them in my head. And it was really fun trying to get the guys to put them exactly in the position I wanted them to be in. But since then, they have been in the ground for 4 years and they look phenomenal. And my vision was right because it looks great. So this property, the one with the informal garden, we put 5 of these curved sable palms in there. They just added very different texture. Some of our grasses, of course, we have a lot of beautiful grasses, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen that lovely waving lavender pink flowering grass that's doing its major thing out there at the moment. That's muley. That is one of our most popular native grasses. Grasses are really important to use actually because they give the butterflies somewhere to go at night, because where do butterflies go at night? They need to find somewhere to sleep, and they don't go and sleep in butterfly houses, so don't waste your money buying them, please. They won't. But they will go and sleep underneath the leaves of bushes. They'll go and sleep in grasses. Some of our grasses actually are larval host plants for some of our skippers. So it's really good to always mix it up by adding some grasses into your property. The Kunti palm that I was talking about earlier, these are them here. The Swan Twin Flower, the ground cover that I was telling you about that I love to use for flagstones, that's one in this one, and that is what's created all along the edge over there. That property is actually in Claremont on the lake. So he is keeping it absolutely beautiful, but he likes to have things manicured. He wants everything to not be natural, but to be the way he wants it to be, but it still looks beautiful. And like I say, you can go online. This magazine actually had, I think there was about 6 or 7 designers in this magazine that are showcasing some of their gardens that they've done. So it's a really interesting magazine just to see. And I think if you go online to search Real Florida Gardener, you can actually find copies of this online. So it's a really great one. And unfortunately, like I say, I've run out of the magazines. So we talked about this a little bit earlier as well, about having year-long color. Year-long color is doable with natives, and it's really easy to do it with vines or with shrubs. We have a lot of really good shrubs here in Florida that flower at different times, so you can actually stagger it and have them flowering at different times. We have one of my favorites, it's called a Simpson Stopper. It is one of those it's an evergreen tree, small tree. It'll get up to about 12 to 15 foot. But it has flowers in the springtime that smell heavenly. They have the most amazing smell. They're small, and it always reminds me that spring is here, because once the Simpson Stopper starts flowering, you know it. And that is another one that the insects go crazy for. They really love the smell. And then it produces berries. It is called Simpson Stopper for a reason. We can eat the berries, just don't eat too many of them. Otherwise, you're going to have constipation. The birds love them too. They have a very funky taste. They're sweet, and then they have like a peppery aftertaste. And I think that's what, I was watching we'd just done a project in Windermere, and my client, her dog was underneath the tree or underneath the bush eating the berries. And I said to her, don't give him too many. And she said, but he loves them. And I said, well, yeah, just don't give him too many. And this is one of my favorite. That's the firebush. That's what we were talking about a little earlier. Firebush is really fun to play with. In my office at home, I actually face out onto a firebush. And it's one that is actually, we've created and let it grow up into a small tree. And what I have had the most fun this year, because I've been working from home for just over a year now, I get so much inspiration from watching the wildlife on that tree. It is absolutely amazing. I have green anoles going on there. I have bees, bumblebees, butterflies. The mockingbirds come, especially this time of the year. These are all the flower buds, but once they're finished flowering, they turn to berries. They start off red, then they slowly turn and they go black. And the mockingbirds, the cardinals, the jays, you name it, they will eat those berries. And it's been so fun watching we have 2 pairs of cardinals in our garden, and there were 2 of them the other day, the male and the female, and lo and behold, there comes Mrs. Mockingbird and chases them away because it's her tree. They're not allowed there. It's really fun to watch them. That's why I say this, even if you don't plant anything else, put one of these in some way. And if you do, there's a compact version and there's the regular one. The compact version gets to about 5.5 foot tall, and it'll create 5.5 foot wide by about 4 foot wide by about 5.5 foot tall. The regular firebush will get up to, if you let it, it's 12 to 14 foot, So you can kind of make a small tree out of it. And it's kind of fun to play with them. You can shake them and, you know, it'll give you a lot of color and a lot of fun. And it will, I guarantee you, bring the hummingbirds. It'll bring the hummingbirds far better than any feeder out there because they like the nectar from this. And we were talking about hummingbirds. Unfortunately, here in Florida, we don't have hummingbirds like a lot of the other states. You're not going to have 10 hummingbirds fighting over a feeder. We have the ruby-throated hummingbirds here, and they're elusive, and they are not here all the time because it's too hot. During the heat of the day, they usually go and hide somewhere in a tree. But you will get them in the mornings. You'll get them, actually, because my fire bush where I sit is southeast facing, the afternoon it's in the shade. So of course the hummingbirds are usually there in the middle of the day as well. But it is an incredible plant. And that's one of our crazy bumblebees. The bumblebees are so heavy, they'll pull the flowers over when they're trying to climb in them to get to the nectar.
How much sunshine does that need?
It can handle dappled sun. It likes full sun, dappled sun. It won't handle deep shade because what it'll do, it'll just head wherever the sun is coming. But it is a great, have you got a lot of shade?
Behind our house, yeah.
Okay. Is it high shade, you know, heavy shade, as in low bushes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's big oak trees.
Depending on how much, you know, if you could put it in an area where, you know, our hottest sun is between 1 and 5 in Florida. So if you could give it some of that afternoon sun, it should be most probably be okay. It might just, you don't want to just give it only morning sun because if you do, it's going to head for the sun. So is your afternoon sun or if you get any afternoon sun there or is it only in the morning?
Yeah, it's pretty muted in the afternoon.
Yeah. You'd have to try it and see. If it's miserable, it won't grow.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And that's a fun thing with natives, boy. If they don't like where you put them, they'll tell you because they will not perform. And if you move them, and a lot of them you can move them as long as they don't have a taproot, but you can move them and boy, if they're happy, they'll grow. And another fun thing of perennials, and I've noticed this over the years, if they don't want to be somewhere where I put them, I'll say, okay, I want you to grow there. And I plant them there and they look great for that season. Guess what? If they don't like it there, they'll move to where they want to go. I have literally seen perennials move from one flower bed halfway across the garden to the other side of the garden and colonize there because that's where they want to be. It's something that it's fascinating to me how they will move. If they're happy, they'll stay there. If they're not happy, and they'll go where they want to be. And you can take them out, put them back there, still move. That's just how that's how perennials seem to work down here. It's fascinating to see. I would never have believed it without seeing, you know, I have some gardens now that are 5.5 years old. So I've been seeing how they've evolved over time and it's really fascinating. Those perennials, boy, if they don't want to be somewhere, they'll move. And there are certain ones that I will never plant in a small garden because I know what'll happen. That's all you'll have. So it's kind of fun. All right, let's see. So I'm sure you guys know this. This is something that is, you know, it's makes sense, but natives don't need to be mowed. They help to reduce air pollution. Here in Florida, we have a huge problem with too much chemicals being used on all the turf and in the golf courses and all the rest of this. The nitrogen and sulfur and all of those type of fun things are causing havoc to our waterways. And with natives, you don't need any of that. You literally, my editor or my thing for giving anything, natives very rarely need fertilizer, but you know what I give them when they need any? I make a little bit of my own compost, or I give them good old-fashioned chicken poop. It works really, really well. You can get some really good organic one down here, and that's all you need. Just give them a little bit of that, a little sprinkling of that, and they're fine. A lot of the times just using mulches helps, but you don't need to fertilize them. I very rarely, I don't think I've ever used any form of fertilizer except an occasional hand once a year maybe of my organic chicken manure. So that's something that, just bear that in mind. And of course they also help to sequester carbon from the air. This is our hummingbird that you will find down here, and this was taken by a client of mine. That is another plant that will definitely attract your hummingbirds, coral honeysuckle. It's a great vine, and it's also a great food source for our birds, because in the wintertime when the flowers are done, you're going to have these berries on there that the birds can eat as well. So a coral honeysuckle, that is one that will flower in sun or shade, doesn't really care. It flowers from early spring. Usually mine on the east side of the house will start flowering middle of March to beginning of April, and it's just about finished flowering now. So it does flower for a nice long time. And the fun thing with some of our vines, you can use different vines for different times of the year, and that will just extend the flowering time. Mix this with some of the blue sky cluster vine, and you'll have flowers in the summer and flowers in the winter. And you have the coral, kind of pinky coral color of the honeysuckle, and then you'll have the blue of the sky blue cluster vine. So it's really fun being able to do that with the natives. Let's have a look here. So this is just something that I like to, you know, one of my things that is for dragonfly, actually for us, is very important, is to educate people. So many people don't understand why it's so important to use natives and why it makes such a difference. There are a lot of statutes, and the law is changing all the time. There is a Florida statute out, and it's been out since, gosh, how long has it been out? Anyway, it's one of those that will not, your HOA cannot actually stop you from planting natives. They might be able to give you a bit of a hard time, but they can't stop you from planting them if you wanted to. There are turf replacements on the statute, and actually I'll show you the wording. Like I say, I work in the villages a lot, so I have a lot of fun with the HOA up there. But this is the Florida statute about, this is the reason why people want to do natives, to conserve water, to use less chemicals, and those are really important things here in Florida because of the system and the way that we are down here. And of course, we are heating up. That's a fact. We know that. We are getting hotter and hotter, and it's not going to get cooler, it's going to get hotter. And by using the natives, they're adapted, they're used to this, they know how to handle this heat. You know, my garden in the summertime, I don't water. In the wintertime, I'm usually watering only when we have our dry spells. That's usually in the spring and in the autumn time. This summer, we had quite a wet summer, and we were having a lot of rain for, you know, we were having pretty well an inch and a half of rain every day for a while. And then of course it stopped. And then everything goes, oh, okay, now I need more rain. But with natives, once you've got them established and they're doing their thing, you don't need to water them every single week, especially in the summertime. Like I say, I don't water mine. I water my pots because I have a lot of them, because I'm obsessed about plants. But in the wintertime and in the spring and the autumn, that's the only time we water a little bit with irrigation, just to keep them going. So another good reason why. Now, this beauty is not native. Oh, sorry, that's a cardinal flower. That is another one of our butterflies. That's a black swallowtail. Its larval host, and this is fun, is dill, fennel, or parsley. So if you have dill, fennel, or parsley in your garden, you might have somebody eating it.
Wow.
The caterpillars from this little guy. So put some dill, fennel, or parsley in your garden, and you'll bring that butterfly there too. The flower is a cardinal flower. It's one that you will find a lot if you go out onto any of our springs, and especially this time of the year, it should be flowering. If you go kayaking or walking to any of our parks where there is some water, you'll find that beauty growing there. It is the most gorgeous red. I've actually seen it up as far as Virginia, and I'm sure it goes further than that, but it is the most beautiful red flower, and it grows on, literally I've seen it growing in water or right next to water, so it likes a fair amount of water. But it's a beautiful autumn, early winter flowering perennial. And then that's just some of my references. Any questions? Anything you would like to know more about, or? Ooh. Sorry. Yes.
I'm invaded by Purple Queen.
Okay.
A landscaper put it in many years ago. It's moving all over the place. It's growing up through my bushes.
Okay.
How do you get rid of it?
Mexican petunia.
I was just going to say, is that Mexican petunia?
No, it's a purple leaf and
Okay.
a pink flower.
Okay. You know, Mexican petunia is one of the worst. Purple, I'm not familiar with that one. I would say you'd most probably have to dig the whole thing out, roots and all. Mexican petunia is another one that is a class 1 invasive, so please, please, please don't ever plant it in your garden, because you will never get rid of it. You can leave maybe that much root and it'll grow, and it'll keep growing, and it'll keep coming back. So you have to get every single section and piece of root out. It's a beautiful plant, and it flowers prolifically all around, and Lowe's and Home Depot still sell it, and people still plant it. And it is a really big problem for our native areas because it takes over. So that's one of them that I have a client, it was planted in 2 areas with concrete around it. It has gone underneath the concrete of the driveway and come up the other side. So yeah, you can't get rid of it very easily. So I'm sorry, I don't know what that plant is. You would just have to,
That's what he called it.
yeah. So yeah, just try and dig it out. And
In the bush, I'd have to dig the whole bush out.
yeah, unfortunately, this is a problem. You know, Florida stuff grows pretty well 12 months of the year. It might grow a little less in winter, but it does grow all year
It was
round.
never planted there.
Yeah.
Moved itself.
It moved itself. Yeah, see, this is the problem. Does it have? It's low growing and it spreads.
Correct. Oh, with deep purple leaves and little pink flowers.
Pink flowers that almost look like a triangle.
Yes.
Is that Wandering Jew?
Sounds
Sounds like Wandering Jew. Yeah, you actually, if it is Wandering Jew, you can actually pull that out and it will go. Just you'll have to. You don't have to get all the root, but if you just keep pulling the plant, and please don't put it in the garden waste. Put it in the dustbin, trash bag.
Okay.
Don't put it in your because it will just spread with the landfill or anything like that. So but you should be able to get rid of that. That's not as bad as some of them that I've heard of. Okay, no problem. Any other questions? I've also brought some plants and I will be happy to go over some of them with you if you guys are interested in any natives. I brought some larval host plants and some nectar plants just to give you a different selection of stuff. Unfortunately, this time of the year, of course, not a lot is flowering, so of course I don't have a lot to show you that are flowering. But the tall red one over there, I don't know if you're familiar with that, that is a type of penta. It is not native, but it is one of those Florida-friendly plants that I use in pretty well everybody's garden that I do a design for because it has phenomenal habitat value. I have counted most probably 7 or 8 butterflies at a time using my penta in my front garden. It is hugely popular and it is the old-fashioned penta. It is not the ones that you buy at Lowe's and Home Depot that are the little low ones that you have to deadhead every 5 minutes because if you don't, they won't flower. That one you never have to do anything with. Maybe once a year you cut it to the ground, let it come back and it's beautiful for the whole summer. So that is one, and I can get that in pink or red. It's, as I say, one of my favorites. It is a little leggy because it's been growing in too much shade, so that's why it's gone. But you can cut it back a little bit and it'll refresh. Let me just go over this way and I'll show you some of these. This one is a medicinal and an edible. It's called spiderwort. And I'm sure you guys have grown this up north and you know that some places there you can't get rid of it. Down here it's actually not as bad. Did you know that you can eat it? And I had a client who made a quiche with it and she said it was phenomenal. It tastes like spinach. So you can eat it and it is also medicinal. So if you get stung by anything, you can take a leaf and it has a clear sap, rub it on your bite and it'll go away. So that's spiderwort. It has very pretty, it's a day flower. So it flowers in the morning, first thing, it'll most probably open its flower at about 6, 7, well, as soon as it goes light, and then it's done by 1 o'clock. This will grow really well in shade and it will flower in shade really, really well. It doesn't care whether it's sun or shade and it will flower. And it has these very pretty little flowers at the top there. They were flowering when I got here, but of course it's after 1 o'clock, so they're closed. Then these beauties, and of course the caterpillars have been at them, so I'm sorry, there might still be some monarch caterpillars on there. I know there's seed pods. This is our aquatic milkweed. This is one of our few native milkweeds that actually flowers and has leaves all year round. It doesn't go dormant in the wintertime. Our swamp milkweed, which has the pink flowers, and the butterfly milkweed, which has the orange flowers, go dormant in the winter. This does not. There is controversy about whether you should cut it back because we want the monarchs really to leave. We don't want them to stay here. But my concern is we're having so many butterflies staying here. Do you feed them the Mexican milkweed, which is the tropical milkweed, the multicolored one, which is usually either red and orange or red and yellow? Our native milkweeds are solid colors. So if anybody tries to sell you a milkweed and they tell you it's native and it's got 2-tone colors, don't buy it because it's not native. Our natives are pink, white, orange. That's it. Those are our 3 colors of the milkweed. There are 2 different white ones, but those are the main colors. This one, as you can see, like I said, it's been munched and actually, No, there isn't. I thought there was still a caterpillar there. But I've got, this is swamp milkweed. And it can actually grow fine in your garden. You don't have to put it in a bog or in a swamp or in a pond or whatever. You can just plant it and it'll grow fine. It'll adapt. So I've got 2 of those. Then this is, well, actually let's go this way. This is called lyre leaf sage. This is a typical sage. It has a square stem. It is one that flowers in the spring and in the autumn, and it has a very pretty blue and white flower. This is another one that works phenomenally in shade. It really likes deep, dark shade. A lot of the times I have found this growing in people's garden. If they have big old oak trees in their garden, you'll find this there. It's growing already naturally there. This is as tall as it gets. I've seen it before used as a turf or as a ground cover, and then you just mow it, and then all it does is it has the leaves like it does at the bottom, and then these little flower spikes that come up with these purple, with these blue and white flowers on the top. This is just finished flowering. But it has a very interesting leaf, and sometimes when they're in more sun, they actually get red venation on the leaves, so it's kind of fun to see that too. This is called lyre leaf sage. This is one of our host plants, and I bet if you saw this and you saw the flowers, you go, oh, that's growing in my turf. I've seen that before. This is frog fruit. Phylonodiflora. It is a larval host plant for 3 of our little butterflies here. Its other common names is matchstick plant, turkey tangle. It has a lot of names. This, and if there's anybody here that likes to grow things, this is the only plant that I have ever come across that you can stick upside down and it'll still grow. So it's really fun to play with it. At one point when I had the time, I would take this, because as you can see, we got long tangly bits, and I would just literally cut off one of those, and out of one long piece, you can most probably grow about 4 or 5 plants, and you just stick it in the ground. As long as there is a node in the ground, it'll grow. It is phenomenally easy to grow. It's one of those that you find, like I say, coming up in the sides of the road or in the turf all over the place, and it always makes me smile when I see it, because guess what? There's a ton of bees and little happy butterflies flying around it. If you want to keep this as a turf replacement, it grows really well, and you can mow it, keep it at about 3-4 inches, and it's quite happy doing that. If you don't want to mow it, you can have it, it's about 7 inches tall. But it is a really, really great ground cover. It can do in full sun, it can do in part shade. It prefers more full sun than shade. But this is called frog fruit, or turkey tangle, or matchstick plant, whatever you want to call that one. This is one of the, this is swamp twinflower. So this is swamp twinflower. This is the one that I use as a ground cover for along pathways. This likes shade. It does really well in the shade. Unfortunately, these have no flowers because they were cut back recently, but this is the color, the size of the leaf. It will full in and it will create a wonderful mat, and they grow in a circle out. So, and I have recently found out that these little guys have seeds that are like a pop seed. So when they actually have their seeds, or their flowers are done and they have a seed, they catapult, and I have got them growing in other pots that were near them. So it's kind of fun. So it's one of those plants that will move wherever it wants to, and it will propagate wherever it feels like it, but it's a great little plant. And the fun thing with a lot of natives is, because they propagate fairly easily, you can spread them and pass them on to neighbors, and they won't even realize they're planting natives, because you just tell them, oh, I have babies, would you like some? One of the best for that is tropical sage, and unfortunately I don't have any of that. This is another one. So to attract butterflies, you have to have a lot of different sized flowers, and you can't just have the big tubular flowers like the firebush and the coral honeysuckle. You have to have different sized flowers, because we have different sized butterflies. Some of them have very short little proboscis, and some of them have very long. This is called blue porterweed. Again, it's just been cut back, so it looks a little ratty, I apologize. It has blue flowers, and they're edible, and they taste like mushrooms. And they are literally maybe the size of my pinky nail, so they are really small. And I always say to everybody, do you like mushrooms? And they look at me and I say, taste the flower and see. And they go, wow, you're right. So this is a great little, this is another type of a ground cover. It gets a little taller. This gets to about 1.5 feet tall, but it'll spread to about 3.5 feet wide. It is one of our few plants that is cold sensitive. So if you planted it now and we had a freeze this winter, unfortunately you might lose it. If you planted it 2 years ago and we have a freeze, you'll have babies that'll take over, so it doesn't really matter. But this is called blue porterweed. Now there is a non-native version as well that gets tall. This does not get tall. The non-native version will get up to about 3, 4, 5 foot tall. This one doesn't get more than about 1.5 feet, 2 foot tall. So porterweed, that is another really important native. Then the last one, and this is a fun one. This is also a larval host plant. This is one of our passion vines. Now, there is one passion vine I would not recommend you to plant unless you want your neighbors to hate you forever. It's called maypop, and it's called maypop for a reason, because it may pop here, it may pop there, it may pop anywhere. So don't plant it. I have one client that we planted it in, and she loves the butterflies, and she has 3/4 acre. And we spend the whole year actually the season when it's growing, pulling it out everywhere else where it doesn't want to be. But it is a larval host plant, and the corky stem or the passion vines are larval host plants for 2 of our butterflies, our state butterfly, which is the zebra longwing, and I'm sure you guys have seen that. It's a yellow and black butterfly that flaps very gently and elegantly around, and that is our state butterfly. And then the other one is the little orange one. Orange and brown, you will find it everywhere. The cool thing with this plant is that it actually, those 2 butterflies, because they're using the same plant as their larval host plant or their food source, the Gulf fritillaria will only lay in the sun and the zebra will only lay in the shade. So that is how nature has evolved for them to both use the same plant but in different circumstances or different conditions. So it's really cool. You can have one of these vines, have part of it in the sun, part of it in the shade, and you will attract 2 different butterflies into your garden. This is corky stem, and it does have passion fruit on it, and you can see down there, they're little tiny berries.
Yeah.
They will get a little bit bigger than that, but they are black when they're ready. They taste delicious. The birds love them. We can eat them. The flowers are very small. They're very untypical of a passion vine. They're pretty minute, and they are pollinated by one of our native wasps, not by a bee. So it's a kind of fun vine. It is one of the few that doesn't go winter dormant in the passion vines. A lot of our passion vines that are native do go dormant. This one doesn't. And it can be grown, if you wanted to, with a coral honeysuckle. So you have a larval host plant and the nectar source. This is also a plant that I often put with the firebush, and that's called companion planting. And the reason why that is companion planting is because the 2 coexist together. You have the vine for their food, for the caterpillar's food, and you have the flowers of the firebush for their nectar. So that's a kind of companion planting, and there are a lot of natives that we do like that, to create that ecosystem, to be the 2 companions. So that is pretty well it. I also brought birdhouses, because the thing with birdhouses, I don't know if you guys know, but our bluebirds, beautiful bluebirds that you will see down here in Florida in the summertime, sometimes in the winter as well, they are running out of habitat at a scary rate, and that is really important. If you have an open area behind your house, or if you're allowed to, I don't know how they feel about putting birdhouses up here, but if you have somewhere where you have an open area behind you, or you have water or anything like that, put a birdhouse. And especially that one there, the bigger one, is for a bluebird. It has the metal ring to stop the squirrels from chewing the wood or the hole bigger, so that they can use it. It is also important to do some form of barrier at the bottom of the post to stop the snakes getting to the birds, because the snakes love eggs and baby birds. The little bird house is actually for any of our little smaller songbirds. That was made by a gentleman. He is retired and he loves to make bird houses for me. So that is one of his fun little projects. The one is made from eastern red cedar, the big one. The other one is made from pine, and it's pine that was harvested on his property. So he harvested, he felled it, and he actually cut it and everything and milled it. So it's kind of fun. Any questions?
What are the best ones for very, very drought tolerant?
Okay, so hot sun, bake in hot sun, rosin flower. Rosin flower is phenomenal. It is one that it has the most amazing leaves. It feels like sandpaper, and it's starry rosin flower. The scientific name is Silphium asteriscus, and I'll give you the information if you want. It might be in the magazine. That one is it's a perennial that flowers 12 months of the year. It can get up to about 3.5 to 4 foot tall. It keeps basil leaves on the ground, and then it will create flower spikes, and they will just keep on flowering all season, or all year. The fun thing, or the fun fact about that, is it has a lot of nectary tubes in the center of the flower. They're solid yellow daisies, and they're beautiful. They're probably about that size. So they're a big flower. It will keep flowering for up to 2 to 3 weeks, just until every single one of those tubes is actually opened and being pollinated. So it's a great plant. I love to pair that with ironweed. Narrowleaf ironweed will work well also in a hot sunny area. And that one of course flowers in the autumn time, so it's will come in behind that yellow. Blanket flower, black-eyed Susan, all of those will work really, really well in a very hot, dry, sunny area. And those are all perennials. There are some shrubs that will work as well. Okay.
Nice.
Anything else? Yes.
When is a good time to cut the porterweed back? I have one that's huge.
Okay. Is it tall?
Not
Or
really.
just
maybe-
wide?
Yeah, it's wide.
So you can cut it now. Where are we? We're now pretty well towards the end of October, and we have cooler weather coming. I've just cut all of mine back, so I think you're okay. How long has it been in the ground? For a while?
A couple of years.
Okay, so you'd most probably have babies underneath it. So if we did have colds, then you'd most probably have something come back. But you can, it's one of those plants that it doesn't care. Usually you can cut it any time of the year, and you can hack it back pretty harsh, and it won't care. It really is very forgiving. And that's something with a lot of natives, just FYI. You can, tropical sage, a lot of the perennials, you can cut them back, and they won't mind. They'll keep coming back. The way to kill them is if you cut it to the ground and then give them nothing to grow from. But if you cut it back a half, a third, they'll come back. They won't really mind about that. Tropical sage is another one for hummingbirds and for big butterflies. It's we get it in 3 different colors, the native colors, which is red, white, and pink. That's one of my favorites to say that I spread to everybody, because it prolifically reseeds, and it will grow in full sun, and it will also actually grow and flower in pretty deep shade. So that's tropical sage. That one is, I don't actually have any photos, that's interesting, of that one, but that is also a great perennial, and it works really well in a lot of different areas, and it will bring you hummingbirds, definitely. Okay. Yes?
I just moved here from Minnesota, so I'm learning the local plants.
Oh yes.
Are there any liatris that will grow in Florida?
We have 17 different species of liatris that grow in Florida. I couldn't name them all, but there is Liatris spicata grows really well down here, Liatris gracilis, there is Liatris seminensis. My one that I go to a lot of the time is spicata, because it's very easy. Yeah. The funny thing with Liatris down here is that they don't always come back. So you need to collect the seeds or let the seeds drop and try and get them to come back that way. They can be a little more pernickety than some of the other stuff. But they're beautiful, and they're flowering now, so they're spectacular.
They were great monarch dragons.
Yes. The big butterflies love them. A lot of the swallowtails will use them. The thing with, the Liatris, I think you'd have to mix them with some goldenrod or something like that to help give them some support and whatnot, but they do beautiful. Oh yeah. Okay. Anything else? I'm going to be here for a little bit if you want to ask me any more questions about anything, and I'm always available. I gave out some of the books, and if you want to take some business cards, I will be happy to help anybody. I do, like I said, do designs, so if anybody's interested in having any help with designs, and I also do consultations. So, all right. Thank you for having me.
So what are the neighbors good in pots?
Oh yeah. How big do you want?